I'm Dennis Anderson, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North. A nation divided as Americans wait for the final results of the presidential election. Tuesday's vote shows a stark division in our country. We will analyze the election in Minnesota and Wisconsin with two political science professors, and you'll hear from newly elected Minnesota lawmakers about their vision as they head to the legislature. These stories and more coming up on Almanac North. Hello and welcome again to Almanac North. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Dennis Anderson. Julie is off this week as we continue to alternate hosting the program during the pandemic. Our show was recorded on Thursday afternoon. And at the time of this recording on Thursday, the status of the presidential election is still very much in question. Democrat and former Vice President Joe Biden seems to have the upper hand by the slimmest of margins, with some states still counting votes. No winner has been declared yet as of Thursday, and expected recounts and lawsuits could mean we won't know who the next president will be for weeks. Voters in Minnesota's 8th Congressional District sent Republican Pete Stauber back to Washington by a strong margin. Stauber defeated Democrat Quinn Nystrom with 56% of the votes. Stauber is the first Republican to repeat a win in the former Democratic stronghold district since 1944. Most incumbent lawmakers in northern Minnesota did manage to hold on to their seats, but the area is becoming more competitive for Republicans. In House District 6A on the Iron Range, there will be a likely recount with a razor-thin margin as of our recording time. Republican challenger Robert Farnsworth had a 47-vote win over incumbent Julie Sandsted in that race. In Wisconsin's 7th Congressional District, Republican Tom Tiffany held on to his chair, defeating Democrat Tricia Zunker. In the 73rd Assembly District, Democratic incumbent Nick Milroy appears to have won by a slim margin over Republican challenger Keith Kern. And under Wisconsin law, a losing candidate can ask for a recount if the margin of loss is less than 1%. Overall, voter participation in the 2020 general election reached record highs. Some 3.2 million Minnesotans cast ballots. That's more than 78% of those eligible to vote. In Wisconsin, another 3.2 million voters were registered, and more than 141 million votes for president had been cast in the country. The Northland was a hotspot for presidential candidate visits leading up to the election. On Election Day this week, we spoke with a voter and an election protection worker about why it was important to vote during this historic election year. And we also heard from Duluth City Clerk on voter turnout and how the pandemic changed things up to this election cycle.
My name is Heather Palo. I live in Duluth, Minnesota, and I think it's super important to vote in this election because it's such a historic election. There's so many high tensions, and I think we need to make progress the best way we can by using our voice, voting.
I'm Chelsea Helmer. I'm the Director of Administrative Services, and I am the Election Administrator for the City of Duluth. Right away, heading into Election Day, we saw about 47% of registered voters had already cast a ballot. So that's a record high number of folks who had chose to early vote. But additionally, we're hearing from all of our election judges out in our polling locations that it's been very steady turnout. We're also hearing that there's a very high percentage of folks who are registering for the first time.
We are on site at the polls to assist voters who may have difficulty, who don't know if they're registered or if they're at the right polling place. We're also checking to make sure that there's no intimidation or anything like that going on. Intimidation would be a group of people surrounding voters or wearing clothing that was designed to try to influence people one way or the other, or to try to get them to just leave without voting. But we have encountered none of that up here. I don't expect to. This is America. We tend to, when the rubber meets the road, we tend to be a very civilized group of people, and especially in places like Duluth. This is a bipartisan effort to assist voters to exercise their legal right to vote.
Excellent. Stay to the left.
Yeah, it's definitely a historic election. We're primarily for two reasons. One is we are projecting a record high voter turnout due to a number of reasons, but presidential elections historically, we've always had a high voter turnout, but you're also seeing a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of political activity on both sides of the aisle. And additionally, you know, this is an election during a pandemic, which poses a number of challenges and is unique. We needed to implement a number of precautionary measures in the polling locations to ensure that voters who wanted to vote in person could do so safely. So we knew that a lot of people would choose to cast their ballot by mail. We saw that in the ballots that were returned to us. Additionally, there were a lot of folks who came out to vote early in person. Definitely it's a record-breaking year. Historically, we've only had about 6,000 people kind of if we look at the 2016 election, who cast their vote early. And so now we're at about 24,000, so it's certainly a stark difference.
I decided to request a ballot early, and I dropped it off today in my city courthouse. I grew up in a military family, so we were always taught voting is your civic duty. It's the best thing you can do at a civilian level. I've had some friends who are new to it who have gotten out this year for the first time, which is really cool. It was very interesting to see just how many times we got visited this year. Having presidential be this close to Duluth is just very interesting to see how much turnout there was for that.
If people can't vote, democracy is gone. That's the only power we really have in the system, is to elect the representatives that we can trust to do the right things for the greater good.
That's, you know, things about the water quality, that's things about, you know, the tax rates, where people are living, housing people, all of these things. And that's the best way you can make change on a small level, is by voting.
Voter turnout was high in the region, with St. Louis County reporting 90% of its 131,000 registered voters casting a ballot. Joining us now with analysis of the 2020 election is Dr. Cynthia Rugeley, Associate Professor and Department Head in UMD's Political Science Department. And Dr. Elisa von Hagel is an Associate Professor of Political Science at UW-Superior. Thanks to both of you for being here once again. A lot to analyze tonight. Now, no matter what happens in the race for the president, I guess the big question is, can voters feel that they went to the polls and what the results are going to be will be legitimate?
That's a good question. And I mean, it seems like they're, from the very top levels of government, they're being challenged that perhaps they're not legitimate. But they should feel very safe. They should feel very confident in their votes, because they've been counted, they've been treated fairly. These things of fraud, they just don't exist.
Mm-hmm. Dr. von Hagel, do you see it the same way?
I do, and I think the outcomes may be taking a little bit longer than people certainly would like to take place, and certainly we all were hoping that, by Tuesday night we would have known at some point, or even hopefully Wednesday morning, and it's certainly, drawing out, and just because we have had these, drawn out proceedings that will certainly continue on, yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's fraud or that their votes won't count.
Why do you think so many turned out to vote this time around?
I mean, there's, just COVID. I mean, certainly the pandemic and all the repercussions, the effects on the economy, the social injustice, that has been taking place across the country, the protests, and certainly, I think so many people see these events as playing out in such a dramatic role in their personal lives.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Rugeley, how about yourself? Why do you think it ended the way it has?
I agree. I mean, there was a lot of interest in the presidential race, of course, but I also think that the vote by mail made it easier for a lot of people to vote, and so that probably increased voter turnout too, just because it was simpler, it was an easier fashion for doing it.
Mm-hmm. Are you really expecting to have any massive fraud turn up, or is this are these politicians speaking when we talk fraud?
It's politicians speaking when we talk fraud. There's absolutely no evidence that there's widespread fraud. I mean, there are individual incidences, and the reason we know about it is because they're caught, and that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Doctor, when we look at all the people who voted in this region, why do you suspect the majority of them did go to the polls. Maybe half of them went to the polls rather than vote early. Why the split, do you think?
I think for those who went to the polls, that there is perhaps some tradition or family traditions involved. I know I have many students who are from the Iron Range, and they have an incredibly strong tradition of, civic engagement, of this, civic responsibility, and it's this, almost like family tradition where they go together. And so I think there is a lot of that, that is present in this area where, it's just your, civic responsibility, and it's what you do, regardless of the situation. And so I think that definitely still had an impact and definitely led to, perhaps a greater proportion of people going to the polls on Election Day.
Did you see any surprises in Tuesday's election, particularly local elections?
I knew that was a Republican district, CD8 was, but I mean the size of the margin of the victories there, and the fact that it did go down to a lot of those state legislative races really surprised me. Pete Stauber's a good candidate, and he's a good representative for that district, but I just didn't think it was a 20-point district, a 15 to 20-point district, and it kind of turned out that perhaps it is.
Pete Stauber, of course, got his second term, the only Republican to be returned a second time since 1944. That's 76 years.
I know, yeah.
Why do you think voters were so pleased with him?
Well, I think there's a couple of factors. One is that he's like I say, he's a good candidate for that district. He's got a labor background. He's pro a lot of issues that they care about out there, and so I mean, particularly in the Iron Range. And again, he's able to draw that combination of traditional conservative Republicans plus a lot of the labor union Democrats that make up so much of the region.
Nick Milroy in your area was returned to office, a slim margin.
Very, very slim. I think last I heard was 139 votes, which for him in that in that district is incredibly small count. And so Kern's campaign has yet to, I think, as far as I'm aware, has yet to say that they will ask for a recount, but they're certainly within the parameters under state law to do so.
Question I want to ask, did early voting benefit one party over another?
Well, you can see that there's a dichotomy, and a lot of it was that Republicans and President Bush emphasized supporters to vote on Election Day. And so did it benefit one party? No, I mean, it didn't. I mean, you can see in CD8 that it didn't, that Republicans did quite well under it. People get the impression it is now, but remember that same-day voters were overwhelmingly Republican and mail-in voters are overwhelmingly Democrat, and that's by design, and it was by the request of the President of the United States, and so it shouldn't be unexpected.
Senator Tina Smith in Minnesota here is going back to Washington, beating Jason Lewis. Jason, of course, did a lot of advertising in terms of protecting the police, be certain that we don't underfund the police departments. Was there some negative advertising in there that you saw?
Yeah, there was. I mean, the last minute one where the towns were burning down, that was a pretty harsh ad. That was a tough one. So yeah, there was some negativity in it. There wasn't as much as I thought there would be in this election cycle. That might have been played to a lot of the greater Minnesota, the less urban areas, but I don't think it helped him much in the urban areas. Superior
said no to a part-time mayor, and some people would like to have seen a city administrator instead. Why do you think that failed?
It's, there's, I think, many different forces involved there, and I think that largely, at least as far as I'm aware, that push for that was seen as a way to limit the power of the mayor, by certain forces, whether it's certain people on the council, the town council itself, as well as others in the community, and who weren't necessarily in support of Mayor Payne and all of the different actions that he was taken, or things that he's been involved in. And so I think for supporters of Payne specifically, but also of many of the things that he has accomplished and done, and things that he stands for, that a vote for that would have, severely limited or restricted his ability to continue to carry out his work there.
Regardless of who won offices, all in all, a good election, brought out a lot of people.
It did, and I mean, I think that there's a whole lot to be proud of in this election. People got out and voted. They did it in an orderly fashion, and I'm just believing the elections because they work.
Absolutely, I agree. I mean, the fact that so many voters, new voters, especially amongst younger voters, college age. I mean, that we haven't seen turnout in that
Sure.
demographic in, quite some time, which hopefully it sticks and they, become strongly engaged voters for
Yeah.
life. But yeah, I mean, it's, it'll take a little while to maybe, find out, and certainly that is frustrating for
And
so
on
many
that
people.
note, we have to say goodbye. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
It was fun
Thank
to
you.
have you on the air again tonight. Thank you both. There will be some new lawmakers heading to the state capitol following this week's election. In Minnesota House District 5B, Republican Spencer Igo captured the most votes in this week's election. The 24-year-old Igo told Almanac North producer Greg Grell why he decided to run for the open seat.
This position is not something I ever considered myself doing. My background is I have a degree in public administration. My passion in life is public service. That's always what I want to build communities and make them better. And when Sandy chose to retire for her personal reasons, there I was like, okay, well, I love this community. I'm from here, and I want to be able to hopefully raise a future family here and allow my friends to be able to do the same. I chose to jump in the race and say I want to be that leader for our Northland, and it's been an amazing campaign. The conversations I've had knocking on the doors around this district, the concerns people have spread with me, I mean, it's humbling. It really is. I have so much energy to get down there and take all these concerns down to St. Paul for everyone.
So let's talk a little bit about your background. You were a field representative for Representative Stauber, Congressman Stauber. Was that helpful, do you think, in the campaign?
Right. Well, I'm really blessed having that opportunity to work for, obviously a congressman like Pete Stauber, who's very respected and has done a wonderful job for our communities here in the 8th District. Having that ability to work for him, I've been working with area leaders for the last 2 years, and it kind of gave me an inside look at these are the issues that we're facing here in our Northland. And like I told you just before, that having that background and wanting to have public service in my life, it really just kind of gave me a lot of experience there and built a lot of relationships that gave me some knowledge of, okay, here are the things that we need to focus on, and this is why I want to run. And it gave me a really clear vision that I wanted to share with people.
And can you talk a little bit about some of that vision, what some of your issues will be when you get down to St. Paul?
Yep, so my two things are education and economy, and I think they're really tied in. Obviously we're recovering from a pandemic. It's going to be imperative we get our economy back and rolling. I think we start with our education to fix that solution. We need career and technical trainings in our high schools. Advocate for that, because what that can do is give students the ability to find and discover their gifts when they're in that high school setting, whether that be they want to go just get an AA, they want to go into the trades, they want to go to a 4-year college, whatever that may be, they can find their skills, utilize them. And then in turn, a lot of those jobs and careers exist right here in our Northland. So the future to our economy is retaining our youth and building a thriving Northland. Another good thing COVID brought with that was that the need for rural broadband expansion here in our Northland. That can bring jobs that only maybe exist in the metro up to northern Minnesota. And that's not your $10, $12 an hour job. That's a family wage. Give more opportunity to our students, our next generation, to find experiences, find ways to live, thrive, and prosper up here. We're going to build a Northland that's amazing. And like I said in my campaign, I want to bring our best days to reality. And that's why this SD5 team is so amazing. I mean, it's a unique part that there isn't another team like this in the state, where the senator, House Representative-elect, on the other side, Matt Bliss, all working together to carry the water for this region to get things done. I mean, we really want to spread that message and how we can just bring so much change and so much good to our Northland for everybody. This isn't about red. This isn't about blue. We all want to live and thrive up here.
Now, you're a relatively young state representative-elect. You're 24 years old. Do you think that youth will be a benefit in St. Paul, or how do you see that playing out as you take your position in the legislature?
I think it's one of the lines used in my campaign, the energy to serve, the passion to make a difference, and the resolve to see it through. That I want to use my age to make that happen. If anything, I want to try and bridge this metro and rural divide. Being a younger younger guy, I want to use my experiences to try and bridge that gap. I just talked a lot about education. Yeah, I may not have children in the education system, but I guess it wasn't that long ago that I was a part of the system. So maybe I can give some feedback about how we can make it better, because our students here in the state of Minnesota are the customer, and we need to make sure they have the best opportunity. So those are some ways I want to utilize my age to really kind of make a difference down there for all of us.
Well, Spencer Igo, State Representative-elect, thank you very much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
There will also be a new state senator representing Duluth in Senate District 7. Democrat Jen McEwen defeated Republican Donna Bergstrom in Tuesday's election. Producer Greg Rowell talked with McEwen to find out what she would be focusing on during her first term in St. Paul.
My key priorities are going to be the basics, healthcare, housing, and then of course the elephant in the room is our transition to a clean energy economy. That the climate crisis is upon us. We have right now very strange weather even in Duluth, and I know weather is not necessarily indicative of the climate crisis, but we have had some really out of the normal cold and now out of the normal warmth, so warm that in fact my family's talking about taking a dip in Lake Superior later today. That's not something that is normal in November. But we do have to transition our economy to a clean energy economy, and we have to do it with urgency. We don't have time to slow pedal this. And we need to be able to find ways to come together. And I think that across party lines, there is this sort of realization coming to people that we are going to have to make this transition. So the compromises are going to be more around how do we do that? What is that transition going to look like? And I'm really eager to get working on that. And then, like I said, the core issues of housing.
Now, of course, it looks like the legislature is going to remain split in Minnesota, and that means that Republicans will have their say as well. Do you feel confident that there's some common ground where you'll be able to work across the aisle with your Republican colleagues?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's one of the things that I'm really looking forward to in getting to work in the Senate. I think that, you have this opportunity to forge these really positive interpersonal relationships with people that really transcend ideological or political orientation. And we get to know one another and we get to find ways that we can work together. I'm really looking forward to making that personal connection with all of my colleagues in the Senate.
Now, of course, you have a background as an attorney working with disabled. Talk a little bit about how your professional experience you think will translate to the legislature.
Well, one of the things that I sort of pride myself in as an attorney is that you really, when you're working on a case and you're advocating for your client, you really fight for that client. You give it your all. You advocate for them fiercely, but you also have to keep in mind that the judges that you're working with, that the other attorneys, that the opposing attorneys, and that all of the professionals, you're going to be working with those people again and again. So you do form that you find that sweet spot of being able to advocate vigorously for your cause and for your client, while at the same time being able to compromise when it's appropriate to do that, and also forming good, positive relationships with people who you're going to battle against, so that you can work toward a better outcome.
Now, you mentioned a little bit earlier about housing and some of the other disparities in Minnesota, but I did notice in your website, you talked about how the disparities in Minnesota are some of the worst in the nation. Can you talk about that a little bit and what you hope to accomplish in the legislature?
Yeah, I mean, this is something as Minnesotans, I think we really have to take a hard look at ourselves as a state. We have this very strange situation where we've had really wonderful outcomes in many ways in our economic institutions, our educational institutions. We pride ourselves in having the highest voter turnout and having a lot of really good things going in Minnesota. But unfortunately, a lot of the good things that we produced in Minnesota have not reached some of the more disenfranchised communities. So communities of color, people who are living also on the economic margins have really not been able to have the benefits of the good that Minnesota has produced. So yes, I think that there's, that's a systemic issue, and it's wide ranging. It has to do with how we approach our educational institutions, how we do our economics. But I think really that should inform us that in every piece of legislation that we're looking at and working on and moving toward passage, that we need to examine how that will affect those communities, and how and what are some ways that we can actually change that legislation to really express the voices of those communities and seek solutions that are coming from those communities as well.
Well, State Senator-elect Jen McEwen, Democrat from Duluth, I want to thank you very much for joining us, and good luck as you head to the legislature this coming year.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here.
And we will have more coverage of the 2020 election and hear from other victorious candidates in the upcoming weeks. Well, we're out of time, but you can keep up with Almanac North by following us on social media. You will find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Visit the WDSE website for program updates, upcoming events, and more information about the station. And download the PBS video app for on-demand viewing of your favorite programs. Thanks to our guests and the crew here in the studio, I'm Dennis Anderson. Stay healthy and be kind.